Welcome back to Uba Cordero Show. My name is Olivia, and with us here is Uba Cordero. So today we're going to talk about the U.S. Elections and Joe Biden as the U.S. President-elect and what these elections mean for Africa. I would like to mention that the Uba Cordero Show is now available on radio at the blackatlanticradio.com, which is an internet-based radio streaming from Miami, Florida, and it's run by Miami DJ Kari Pastena, who is also a historian and educator. So please be sure to visit it at the blackatlanticradio.com, and we'll also leave the link down below. So Uba, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Olivia.
So these past 3 months have really been nerve-wracking for so many of us, but Biden was able to emerge victorious and is now the U.S. President-elect. So going back to the Trump presidency, we know that Trump isolated Africa in so many foreign policies, and he also used so many sundry words to describe Africa, Apart from that, he also gave Egypt permission to bomb Ethiopia, over the Nile waters. And, he also mentioned Nigerians as not wanting to go back to their hearts. And, apart from that, he also once mentioned the Nigerian leader, Buhari, as lifeless. So, just illustrate to us how the Trump presidency treated Africans, and if you could elaborate more on some of his wordings that he used towards Africa, as well as the policies that isolated Africa.
Thank you so much, Olivia, for asking me this question.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to look back on the Trump presidency and to see what they got right and what they did not get right.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to Africa, there's a considerable level of stability when it comes to the United States foreign policy on Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often characterized by minimalism. Like the United States do not do a lot when it comes to Africa. Regions such as Europe, Asia, and the Middle East takes precedence over the continent of Africa. But when policies that have been enacted in Africa tend to stay permanent over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So we see Reagan engagement with Africa, President Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
In the 80s, re-engagement with apartheid discussion called re-engagement policies then led to eventual release of Nelson Mandela in the 90s. So that was then then in the 90s you see George H. Bush the father was so concerned about ending conflicts, including Somalia, Angola, and the Rwandan Civil War in the early days. And so that was characteristic of George Bush first. And in the Clinton era, we see the African Growth Opportunity Act called AGOA, which Clinton signed to encourage African cotton farmers and agricultural entrepreneurs to reach American market without tariffs. In the Bush era, there's this program called PEPFAR, Presidential Emergency for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, which help increase access to antiretroviral drugs to help people with HIV/AIDS. Then Obama continued with the same policy, but Obama focused a lot more on Power Africa, which was intended to increase energy access as well as to train young leaders to lead the continent in the future. Trump did not end these policies. He continued where they had stopped. He continued Power Initiative, AGOA, kind of expired, but so Trump, you could say, did not ignore Africa by not hurting these policies, which is kind of different from how he has treated Obama's other policies domestically. But more important, he signed an initiative, not really signed, but encouraged an initiative that was a bipartisan approach called the Prosper Africa Group, which increased African financial investment from American investors to doubling America's capital in Africa from about $30 billion before Trump presidency in 2016 to $60 million billion dollars after.
Wow.
So when you examine it from the perspective of financial investment,
Yeah.
Trump did very well in Africa.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So apart from the financial investments that Trump did in Africa, could you maybe illustrate or tell us more about Trump's influence in terms of conflict, democracy, and also authoritarianism in Africa?
Yeah, that's where it's lacking. So that's the question of what is the responsibility of a president of the United States. He's obviously the leader of the world as we speak, and what they say do matter.
Yeah.
And Trump's presidency, it's not. We cannot talk about him respecting the continent of Africa. You just use very disparaging words on the continent of Africa, its people and its leadership.
Yeah.
So those really hurt that. But also his absence in continental arena when it comes to Africa, because of his approach toward isolationism, led to the withdrawal of American leadership in the continent, which created fissures leading to conflicts, not entirely blamable to America, but because the absence of America kind of was proximate cause. So you have conflicts arising in Mali, Ethiopian conflict in northern Ethiopia, Ethiopia with Egypt almost going to war. There's other problems in Uganda and other countries. So you could say that for almost a decade, there's been a lot more stability in the continent of Africa. And then when Trump comes to power, there is a lot of disturbances in the continent. So you could attribute this to America's absence as a regional power. But fundamentally, what's noticeable about Trump is the degree to which he encouraged authoritarian leaders to fashion their political exercises in the form like Trump. So you have really authoritarianism increasing in the continent. You have presidents like John Pombe Magufuli. You have also leaders in Zambia, in Gabon, becoming a lot more authoritarian than during the previous administration.
And so with Trump, heading out, what would you say is Biden's promise on Africa?
Biden is not going to change a lot in terms of U.S. foreign policy because, like I said before, it's been really stable over the years since Reagan. And it hadn't changed much with the end of the Cold War and during the war against terror. What we expect from Biden, is a new, more diplomatic language when it comes to Africa. And maybe a much more awareness of the need for development and security of Africa, but not really in substantial policy, unless African bilateral treaties are made specific to the countries.
So do you think with Biden coming in that isolation of Africa will still continue?
I think the United States grand scheme of things, Africa is really on the lower cadre.
And what would you say would be the implications of this?
The implications of this is that China might move into Africa and occupy this space. There's a lot at stake here. One of them is votes at the WTO and the United Nations. Almost 54, 56 countries can tilt decision making. And if China has influence over these countries, they are likely to vote in favor of China when the United States might have used these votes. That's why the Biden presidency will be important. But in terms of security and international engagement, international diplomacy, it's just gonna be a bilateral situation. I don't think the United States is gonna engage Africa as a continent.
Oh wow! And so as we wrap up, I would really like to hear your views on, what happened in the Capitol building last week. So what are your views on the insurrection of the Capitol building, and what does this image show to Africans about the United States?
I've been thinking a lot about that, and I think it shows two things. It shows how much the American people are people as every other person in the world. There's always this belief that, okay, maybe the Americans are different because it's put in such a pedestal. But people are going to be people. But the institutions in the United States are really matured that they can control human urges to do certain things. And that insurrection in Capitol building last week kind of blew that open and exposed, how these institutions can also be damaged if the person at the top is not aware and conscious of how important it is to the normalcy and respect of the country. So African countries are looking to the United States for as an example, and such things happening in the capital of the world's democracy does not augur well and goes ahead to support other forms of government, authoritarianism, dictatorialism, and totalitarianism as alternative, which is not really where we want to go as a collective.
Yeah. So let us know what you thought about it in the comment section. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. We'll see you in our next video.